Jonathan J. Steele, aka DJ Miracle, is the program director of 5 radio stations and the APD of another. You may have heard of it, 105.1 The Bounce in Detroit. Find out how he got to where he is so quickly in his career and why he calls himself a radio nerd. I talked to him this week about perfecting your air check in your resume. If you want to see that video, you can see the link right here. Click on that. It's so much good information that you need if you don't know how to build an air check. But let's just get to know Jonathan J. Steele on this week's How to Radio. What's the first song you ever talked into?
Oh, man. I think it was Light 'Em Up. My songs Know What You Did in the Dark by Fall Out Boy. That was the one. I was at a hot AC station in Zanesville, Ohio.
Okay.
And I had, this was my first time cracking the mic. I was super nervous. I had done like internet radio and stuff before, but I was like on the radio right now. So it was very... it was interesting for sure.
Yeah, I bet. Was this like a part-time gig, a full-time?
It was. I was in Dayton, where I have a lot of family. I was living at the time, and I was a board op for Cox Media Group. I'd been there for a couple years, and I was itching just to get on the air. And I knew in Dayton, working for Cox, it was a long shot to be able to jump and find a position with any of their stations. So I decided to start venturing out and working on my air check, and I sent some stuff to a guy in Zanesville, Ohio. And I ended up getting the night show there. They had a nighttime opening from 6 to midnight. It was a 6-hour shift, Monday through Friday. And when I got there, he kind of auditioned me in the afternoon for an hour. He's like, go on the air. I just want to hear how you sound. And the rest was history.
So you get the first gig in Zanesville, and then then what happens?
I'm in Zanesville. I'm on the air. And then the OM ended up leaving. He was the PD of the station as well. He ended up leaving to go work for the, I believe, the city of Zanesville, maybe. And no one else had any idea about music scheduling. No one else had used Music Master. And to be honest, I had never used Music Master, but I had done internet radio, and I had, like, I guess the mindset of scheduling and, how to lay things down a little bit. I mean, thinking about it now, I kind of cringe, like, of how I was scheduling music then. But no one else knew how to do anything. So I ended up less than a month of me being there, being the music director. But it was such an interesting situation because I was doing the imaging. I was, telling the jocks, I was kind of like the program director in a sense, because the program director didn't know the format, didn't know top 40. And it was kind of a hot AC. We had shifted it to top 40.
You're now MD/PD. Where do you go from there? Like, do you seek out another gig?
I did. I went, and this is the part of my life where I was just hyperactive and just jumping in because, I was just excited. I'm like, oh, I got an air check now. Like, I'm doing this. I went to the Cayman Islands for a short period of time, and I was scheduling music there. I was on the air there. That was my second on-air gig, and then, ended up leaving and was out of radio for all of 2 or 3 months because I was just searching, and then I ended up in Peoria. So
it's always funny. You always see those Cayman Island posts on
oh yeah,
Access,
we'll get into that.
That seems like a pretty sweet gig, but we'll get into that a little bit later. So all right, so back to Peoria, Illinois. What is it that you're trying to do? Like, are you seeking anything out in radio, or are you just kind of taking whatever comes at you?
I think it was a little bit of both. I was younger then, and a part of me just wanted to see how much I could learn at a young age, because I had a PD in Peoria who I still talk to, Chris Stewart, and he was like, by the time you're, my age, you'll be a program director. I'm just like, I'm just a night. There's no way that's going to happen this soon. So I was just trying to soak in as much information, and I think I just kind of felt like I wanted to work for a real company, Diary Market, at the time. And when I was in Zanesville, it was so small and didn't have a lot of money. They didn't invest as much into the radio station. So I still kind of felt like I was doing small town radio. And not that there's anything wrong with that. I just wanted to see if I had the skill set to be able to move up. And the Cayman Islands thing was, a wonderful opportunity. It was more money. And I just kind of wanted to be able to say that I did something, completely on a whim and a risk. And I did. But, Peoria felt real to me because it was Alpha Media. It was a company that was, at that time, Alpha was still kind of new.
Yeah.
So it was a company to work for. And, they had invested a lot into the radio station. It was a brand new station that needed a night talent to just kind of shake up the market. And I'm like, this is my opportunity to prove myself working in a diary market where I'll see some numbers. And my mentor, who is Pat Grooves, Pat Cerullo, he, was working in San Antonio at the time for the company. So, of course, there's guys that I know that are working for the company, and I'm thinking, this is an opportunity to see, is it time? Do I have the set to be able to do this long term? I mean, is this the real deal kind of thing?
And when you got there, were you scared of it? Like, did you finally answer your own question, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. Rather quickly. And again, once you've been doing it for so many years, now I look back at Peoria and I'm like, oh, I don't want to hear any audio. I don't want to watch any video. I was in Peoria. I did the other day and I'm like, whew. But I worked with, it was actually probably the most fun that I've had in radio to this day, because it was a small, it was a brand new radio station with absolutely no resources. And back then I didn't understand exactly how all of it worked. We weren't on the panel, so we didn't have the labels that the competition had. We didn't have, the concert giveaways and the cool promotions. It was just three guys that were young and hungry, and we did a lot of stuff on the streets, and we just wanted to have fun. We did so many crazy things that it was just to get attention, and it was the most fun that I've had. But it was certainly an interesting ride, I guess, because there was no, I mean, I definitely had guidance from my program director, but he was, young himself, and we just were having fun. It wasn't like I was getting air checked,
Did you have any family going at this point, or are you just out in the world?
At the time, I was dating a girl who was trying to shift from being in Troy, Ohio to moving to Peoria. And she had two children who I consider my own. They're not biologically mine, but I've raised them since they were younger, since birth. So we were trying to figure out, are we going to be able to make it work for them to come to Peoria? And then at one point it was working, and then, then it didn't end up working. So it was actually a really rough time in my life because I was going through a lot on a personal level, just super emotional ride, to say. To put it, very simple, it was a lot in my personal life, but I was still pretty hungry on the radio side of things.
I guess it makes you a better jock because then you have to deal with these things and then still go on and have a smile.
That was the first time that I had been told to show my emotions on the radio. My PD, he said, you're going through a lot of stuff on the relationship side of things with the kids. Talk about it on air and kind of be vulnerable. And that wasn't, remember, this was a top 40 station that was very, we leaned rhythmic, we're super high energy, we're trying to have, the party on the radio, and that's all I had known. I thought I was hired to be the party boy, the college frat boy type of, lifestyle. So talking about me going through a breakup and being emotional and all of that was not my comfort zone whatsoever. But I learned that makes for some really good radio. And, I went on the air with it.
So where'd you go from Peoria? How did you get to where to the next?
Yeah, so this is a very crazy story that you're going to be one of the first people to, I guess, I'm going to share this publicly. At the time, it was budget cut time for Alpha. And this was probably 6 months into the gig. The station wasn't doing too well. It had been on the air for a year and a half or so, maybe. And an opportunity came up for me to be a program director in upstate New York. And I was very torn about it emotionally because I was working with such a great team and I had not been there for long. I had only been there for 6 months and I was having fun. We weren't winning, but I was having fun. Yeah. So I went to my program director and I said, he came to me actually, and he said, they are cutting the other guy on the station. He was really torn up about it. So there was another guy on the radio station that did middays, and he was the APD. And he came to me and said, they're letting him go. And he was in tears, he's like, they're going to cut him. And I said, I can fix this. And he said, what do you mean? What are you going to do? And I said, I'll resign. And he said, what? Why would you do that? You're not in any danger. And I said, well, I have an opportunity to be a program director of 3 radio stations, and I've only been on the air here, for 6 months. I'll go, and then they don't have to cut him. And he said, you know, he had me talk to him about the gig to make sure, you know, it's a good fit. And he said, wow, you know, you would do that. So, you know, he at the time was like, you know, I don't want him to ever know we had this discussion, and he didn't want to get in trouble for telling me, you know, about a cut that was, and he also didn't want, you know, the other personality to feel like, you know, he was in the dark. So I ended up quitting and leaving, and it saved the other guy's job for a very long time. The station, actually, months later after I left, it flipped to throwback hip hop, because at the time that was the G format was on fire. You know, it was hot. That PD there ended up getting promoted within the company, so he left. So the only guy that was there was the guy that I ended up saving. You know, so I told him what was really happening, because him and I were roommates, and I couldn't lie to him. I told him what was going on, and I made him promise, you know, this stays between us, but here's the situation. This is going to help me. I'm going to become a program director, and this is going to, you know, help you.
Did it turn out okay? You went to upstate New York to be
upstate New York,
3 radio stations,
and I still am. I'm not there anymore, but that, well, you know, I'll explain how it all happened. But yeah, I went to upstate New York, and I programmed 3 radio stations, and it was right on the Canadian border. It was the most unique situation that I had ever been in, and it was my first PD gig. So I was extremely nervous. I was, you know, I couldn't believe it. I was going to be a program director, and I didn't 100% know what, you know, how I was going to do everything. But it worked out so well that I'm still doing it today, just not there. Okay. Yeah.
Is there anything about programming that you didn't know going into it? Because I don't think I could ever be a program director. Like, I don't have what it takes to make those decisions.
Yeah.
So did you get in there and go, oh, I didn't know that this is what the gig is?
I don't know. I think that there were some things that I knew was a part of the gig, but I'm just like, I'm going to figure this out somehow. I'm going to figure it out. And it helps that, you know, and I say this to people, I'm a radio nerd, right? So I listen to a lot of radio. I'm the kind of guy that on a road trip, I listen to nothing but the radio, and I'm scanning around. I'm listening to imaging. I'm like, hey, babe, 1 second. Turn it up, you know, to hear the idea of the promo. I am a nerd. You know, I listen to a lot of radio. So listening to a lot of good radio or stations that do it well kind of helped me get ideas and, you know, kind of and shaping me of, you know, how to, I guess, lead a radio station.
Yeah.
I think the biggest challenge was more of the interpersonal communication. You know, being a boss, being a manager, having tough conversations with employees, and, you know, trying to walk the line between being a friend and a boss. And there are things like that I was not prepared for, and that's been the toughest part about being a program director.
So you got there. Did you make any big moves? Like, this is your first gig. Did you come in and go like, all right, we're blowing out all the station imaging, we're redoing all this? Like,
funny story, on the top 40 station at the time. No disrespect to the guy that was doing it before me, but I just didn't agree with some of the music on the air, and, you know, how the station sounded, and the voice guy, and, you know, all these different things. So I did make some changes pretty quickly, to the point where my GM sat me down and was like, all right, we sound like a completely different radio station. And I said, you know, that's not the goal, but at the same time thinking, well, it kind of is, you know, I don't really like how the station sounds right now. And he made me reverse everything that I had done. And I'm like, okay, this isn't going to work. I'm thinking, like, I came here to be a PD and not to be told what to do as a PD. And, you know, at the time, like I said, I'm younger, and I'm just like, you know, I'm not listening to, you know, some consultant that's not even in the market tell me what to play. Like, you know, I know what to do.
Yeah.
And thank God we ended up all sitting down and talking and working it out. And then from there, I pretty much had, you know, mostly control over the situation.
So you're still running those stations now, but how did you get to where you are?
Another one of those, hey, Jonathan's in a relationship, and that always interferes with his work life situations. Right before I left Peoria, I met a girl, and we clicked. We hit it off well, and I decided to make a visit. And it was a 15-hour drive one way from Malone, New York, back to Peoria. We met up for the weekend, and we hit it off so well. We began dating, and you know, we were trying to figure out how we were going to make it work. And she had children, and the father of the kids was making it kind of difficult for her to move. And then, I was like, well, I just started this job here, I don't know how I'm supposed to work. And Peoria came calling again, but it was a competition. The same station I hated. And that's kind of how that came about. I went back to Peoria.
What gig did you take in Peoria? What was your position there?
I was program director for WPIA, and I had a lot of fun there too. Peoria was fun. I had a lot of fun in Peoria. It's a small market, but it was fun how much I was on the streets just between both of the radio stations that I was doing when I was there. So I was there for a year in Malone, and I told them, I'm like, look, I don't feel too good about this. I haven't exactly done everything that I want to do with these radio stations, and I don't want to leave you in a bad position, me only being here for a year. Can I still program these radio stations, remotely? I'll come to the market when I can, but I will do everything remotely. And we worked it out. So I was in Peoria, WPIA, and I was programming the Malone stations remotely the entire time. So
where did you go from Peoria?
So I was in Peoria for a year, and me working for Mars Communications Group, still remotely, the owner called me. And he said, well, actually, the GM called me first. GM in Malone said, look, they're making some changes in Pittsburgh. We think it'd be a good fit for you to come back and work for the company. One thing that there's a couple of things I always really wanted to do. One of those was doing rhythmic. I'm a music fanatic. I love all kinds of music. But rhythmic has always been really hot ever since, Spotify and TikTok, and, hip hop is just, at a good point. So I wanted to do something different because I had done nothing but top 40 to this point. I had done the other stations in Malone were country and classic hits, and then I did country in the Cayman Islands. So country and top 40 were the two that I was very familiar with, and classic hits as well. I learned. I'd never done hip hop, but I was a DJ, so I DJ'd in bars and clubs. So I'm always playing hip hop, but I had never programmed a hip hop radio station. And this was taking me now from Peoria to a big market, and at that time my eyes are wide. I'm like, okay. So now we're really playing in the big leagues here. So, me having that connection and still remotely programming those radio stations in Malone opened the door for me to go to Pittsburgh.
Well, you're now programming Whammo, and you make a drive every day. So before we get into that, what else happened? So did you move to Pittsburgh?
Moved to Pittsburgh, and that was the most challenging program director gig that I've had to this day is Pittsburgh, which I still am overseeing it. And at the time, there was only Whammo. There's only one station. Now there's two in Pittsburgh, and I'll get to that.
So how did you end up in Detroit?
By accident, 100% by accident. I was not looking to leave Pittsburgh. I loved Pittsburgh. I was not there for very long. I thought the city was great. I was having fun doing hip hop. I was on the air. I was making connections. I was starting to pick up some gigs. I was fine.
Yeah.
And then an opening came about in Detroit for afternoon drive for Beasley Station, the Bounce throwback station. And the consultant there basically made a post on Facebook. If anybody knows any talent who'd be good for this position. And I had like 4 or 5 people name drop me. And, I was always taught to never not make a connection. You know what I mean? The consultant reached out to me and said, no less than 5 people sent me your stuff. We're interested. And I'm like, what? I didn't apply to this gig. I wasn't sitting here banging down doors to come here. This is all by accident. And that's how it happened. The PD called me, and he wanted to fly me in, and I did an interview with the GM, the consultant, and the PD, and I got offered the gig, and it was, again, mind-blowing, to say the least.
How could you not? Like, if Detroit calls
right
for you, like, they never come looking for you, so that's amazing.
Right.
So
right.
You're doing afternoons there. You're still programming Whammo. Most of your time is spent afternoons, and now you're APD. Did you get hired as APD right away?
No, I actually was told, the the PD at the time could use some help. He's like, the PD, is he has his hands full with other things, scheduling, and you've been a PD before, so get familiar with the station and, focus on doing a great afternoon show. And then down the road, don't be surprised if we, reach out about, you becoming the assistant program director. And that's what happened. Talks came about probably almost a year, about 10 months into me being there. And then the PD ended up leaving. He ended up leaving, and I think he went back home. I don't really know the story because it was the most weirdest situation that I've ever been in. One day he was there, the next day he was gone.
What market is Pittsburgh?
It was 28. I think I'm going to drop to 29.
Do you see a programming or a radio difference from 10 to 29, like as far as on the streets and things like that? Like, what's the big difference between the two?
That's a good question. I mean, you asked really good questions. Pittsburgh to me felt a little less active. The radio state, I thought the radio market was pretty good, but Detroit kind of just feels like the competition. There was just so much more competition. Yeah. In Pittsburgh, I'm the only game in town. We compete with the top 40 station, but let's be honest. I want a translator. They have a full market signal, and their heritage pop station. So, I know that I'm not going to touch them when it comes to the ratings, but, we fill the void of being a hip hop station. So there is no competition there. In Detroit, I'm competing with top 40 stations, urban AC stations, and they all are local. They pipe in like a syndicated night show or, a guy tracking from an out of market on the pop station. But for the most part, it's all local. So they're all in the market and they're all hungry, and it's very competitive. Keeps you on your toes 100%.
Where do you think radio's going, and what advice do you have for those that are just getting into it?
Good question. I think radio needs to evolve to stay relevant. I'm not one of those guys that's like radio's gonna die, but I'm also one of those guys that says radio is headed down a bad path if you don't find a way to stand out. One thing that I always strive and thrive to do is create experiences. If you're, especially on a current station that's playing currents, if you have an opportunity to put a listener at a concert, that's cool. They can buy tickets to a concert. But if you can create an opportunity where they can go bowling with the artist, or, ask the artist questions, or, a meet and greet, or, any kind of opportunity that puts them face to face that Spotify cannot provide, that's what I'm shooting to do. And I think radio needs to find a way to think outside of the box to survive. I don't think radio's dead, and I think a lot of people still listen to the radio, but people listen to the radio to win stuff, and that's cool. I think that people need to listen to the radio also because the cool factor needs to come back. In a sense, in a small market, that's the one pro to, and having, being in a small market is, oh my God, the local radio DJ is down at the ice cream shop kind of thing. And I mean, it even still applies in a big market as well. But I mean, I think that that factor is still kind of there. Like, oh my God, I met this guy so-and-so from the radio station. But it's not cool to tell your friends that I listen to the radio. My friends don't want to admit that they ever listen to the radio. Yeah. They have phones now. So how can radio overcome the lame factor to become cool again? And what can we do to stand out? And that's what will keep radio strong.
That's a great point. How do you feel about personality-driven radio and the fact that they've, cut everything down to 7 seconds? Do you think that let me just say that. I personally think that the way back is to bring back personality-driven radio.
Yeah,
I feel like they've shut us up so much that we don't have a chance to connect. And I think that I think that more people are starting to see that, and as you possibly a programmer in Market 10, do you think that would be something you would focus on?
Yeah, absolutely. That's I think another reason why I had so much fun in Peoria, because I was told to do compelling radio. I wasn't told to keep my breaks short. I was told to do compelling radio and just to follow the formatics of radio. Major market is a totally different ball game, and you are held within that's 7 seconds standard. And I think the reason why podcasts are so popular is because people love personalities. People want they a number of friends of mine say I listen to radio for the morning shows. I like laughing on the way to work. I like, listening to them tell a story or, something I can relate to. During the day, they just play the same songs over and over. And it's because the midday and afternoon jock only talks for 7 seconds. You know what I mean?
I remember the afternoon jock being like the only guy I listened to, like getting out of high school. Like that
absolutely, me too.
Like that's who I listened to. And now they're all quiet now.
Yeah, I think that holds you. I mean, and the part that's the worst is that they are so quiet, and you're held within 7 seconds, and you play 8 minutes of commercials. So it's not really moving the ball. I try to, in Detroit, I do a lot of phone call stuff. I'm not. I'm smart about it, but I'll run a minute call into a stop set. Absolutely. If it's compelling and it's funny, yeah, I'm not going to stop the music suite, but if I'm going into a stop set, I got a great call. Absolutely.
Jonathan J. Steele, I guess I never asked, like, what do I call you? Like, do you
call me whatever you want? It's funny because I'm glad you brought that up. People that I still associate with in Pittsburgh, I was on the radio there as DJ Miracle, and same thing in Peoria. I've been Miracle most of my life. So I got people that are, Miracle, hey, what's going on, man? I got other people, hey, Jay, hey, Jonathan, it comes from everywhere. So I'm completely fine with whatever.
Okay, I'm going off your Facebook profile, so I want to be
okay.
I was like, oh, I guess I never asked. I forget that, that you may not be called Jonathan Jason.
Yeah.
I'll just call you Jay.
Thank
you for taking the time and chat with me. Good luck on, possibly, hopefully, fingers crossed, getting the programming gig in Detroit now that it's open.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Great talk, man.